when I saw, and with some others, the actual Piltdown remains, which had been kept from anybody's eyes for many years.
Interesting.
And which were not appropriately treated, except very rarely, by one or two people in terms of their potential incongruence. And the main thing that I thought was anatomically, and that's what I would brought to it, because I was seeing the original, but I already saw good casts of those at the Field Museum, and we actually had in Chicago. And I essentially dismissed the whole Piltdown thing before it was formally dismissed. 51, it wasn't yet dismissed, 53, and late 53. And I said we just put it aside because there's too many questions. And of course, little did we know the kinds of questions that were involved, that this had been deliberately fabricated, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think that I, and maybe others who were present over that interval, probably didn't realize the historical significance of this situation. People had such had such polarized opinions about Piltdown, one way or another, explaining it away, half explaining it, and evaluating it with properly critical evaluation, which it never really had, which is unfortunate, but it did get it later. And there were methods that were developed with fluorine, using fluorine for the relative dating method, using nitrogen, something else as a molecule, percentage-wise and things like that. All those things were coming online. They were part of the development of all of the isotope work and knowledge that led up to, of course, to the building of the atomic bomb and all of those kinds of things. And it went off in other directions. And increasingly in geochemistry, became stronger and stronger and stronger. And so one had all these things happening. I was involved with the people who were there. I was there to do certain other things on this occasion, to attend the meetings, and any extra days we have, I would be at the museum doing what I wanted to do if they would let me do it at the museum, which they did. Opened everything, took things out of the safe, and, that kind of stuff. And Piltdown was one subject, later one morning. I think it was morning. It was over several hours, so maybe from 10 to 12:30 or something like that. It was in a certain place. We went to this part of a lab or something. Were able to see it. And in those days, you could even handle part of it. That would be less the case now necessarily. You don't have to. But anyway, and I was one of the people who said it was an incongruent thing. I didn't know it was a fake or different kinds of things put together to make one thing. I'm going to avoid it because all the other evidence has no other corroborating evidence whatsoever of any kind. No second place, no whatever. So, so I wasn't too surprised. But I was overpleased. And other people who were there, comparative anatomists, my professor, one of my professors, Sherwood Washburn, physical anthropologist, anatomist from Oxford, LeGros Clark, Joseph Weiner, who's also a physical anthropologist. And this was a provocative moment. But I treated it in a way, quite a perfunctory way, because I didn't see anything in what I could see and determine that was going to change my mind, which was already made up that this was a waste of time, and forget it and pay no attention to it. And of course, that's what it proved to be ultimately with the publications on all these analyses and so on. And it found out that the mandible is, as had been suggested by more than one person, a modified real orang partial mandible with the teeth deliberately treated in a certain fashion and the skull, a pathological or quasi-pathological one in part, that is human, and you have many of the diagnostic parts of it knocked off or seemingly knocked off, and it's all stained to give it an artificial, a truly honest looking but artificial surface and appearance, and so on. But I was not overwhelmed. I was overwhelmed more by the other things at the museum